What's going on, guys? This is Sam, and today I want to revisit the iPhone 10. It's been out since November 3rd of 2017. It's now February of 2018. The hype has died down. Newer phones have come out. So is the iPhone 10 still good? So I initially came out with my iPhone 10 review a few weeks after the device launched, and I was a really big fan of it. I gave it a really positive review, but since then I've been using it every single day. This has been my daily driver. This has been in my pocket for the past 3 months, and I want to give you some updated thoughts on this phone. I want to kick things off with the part of the phone that I look at the most, which is the screen. It's still really good. It's OLED. Apple calls it, I think, Super Retina HD, or some pretty fancy name for just an OLED display. It's incredible, though, because you have the ability with OLED to light up individual pixels or completely turn them off. So when you're looking at media that displays completely black or dark content, the pixels just don't light up, and that makes it look incredible. It also makes the notch just completely blend into the phone. I also want to talk about that, the notch. It's something that I didn't really touch on in my iPhone 10 review. I mentioned it. I still see a lot of people hating on the notch. I see a lot of people saying it's a reason they're not buying the iPhone 10, and to me that's completely irrational. You see the notch for 3 days when you buy the phone, and it just disappears after that. If you're really worried, if you think every day when you wake up, when you check Twitter, when you check social media, you get right out of bed, my first thought when I pick up this phone is not, notch is still there, I probably should have gotten the Galaxy S8 instead, or now the Galaxy S9 coming out sometime in February or March. It's there. You notice it when you notice it, but when you're using the phone, it's not like a conscious thing that you think about. I mean, imagine like the new screen in general. Every day when I pick up my phone, I'm not like, man, that edge-to-edge display, Apple really did it. You get used to it, you think about it for 3 days, you're like, wow, the screen looks beautiful, and then you get used to it. You start using it. It does not detract from the everyday overall experience by any stretch of the imagination. I like the notch. If Apple can make it smaller, which there's rumors for them to do in 2019, that would be really cool. I would appreciate that. But at the same time, it doesn't break the experience of the phone. It doesn't make UI insanely awkward or weird. Control center is sort of weird how you have to stretch still, but the notch is not a big deal. If that's your number one concern about the iPhone 10, go into an Apple store, try it for more than just 3 seconds. Try to not focus on that entirely, because I promise you, after 3 days, it's like it's not even there. Reading over my notes from the initial review and what I talked about then, I mentioned there not being a home button. Gestures are the greatest part of this phone, and I've seen people say sort of that they miss the home button, but once you use it for, again, 3 days, 72 hours, it's second nature. You swipe up to close an app, you swipe up and hold it into the multitasking view, you swipe from the top right to do control center, top left or middle of the notch to view notification center or cover sheet. It's really fluid. I like the swipe gestures, how you can swipe between apps just like that. It's so fluid. The motion system and the motion UI and interaction on the iPhone 10, I think, is unparalleled against any phone in the market, and it is legitimately one of my favorite parts about this phone. It sounds small, but when every interaction feels meaningful, and you're not just clicking a button to do the same thing or clicking it twice to go into multitasking, when you're actually swiping, it adds meaning to interaction, and I think that's a really important part of design. I'm not a designer, but as a user, it feels really nice to me, and I love the gestures on the iPhone 10. That is one part of the iPhone 10 that I've liked more and more as I started using it. If I go back to an iPhone 8 or even something like my Galaxy S8 or the Google Pixel 2, having to tap one button in different ways to do different things, it feels old. It feels old-fashioned. Swiping up feels natural, and it is such a great part of this phone that I think a lot of reviewers overlook. There's also a lot of controversy around Face ID for the iPhone 10, which I sort of understood, but now that I've used the phone for a long time, I don't understand why anyone would be against it at all. It's incredible. It fails infinitely less than Touch ID did for me. It works better. Does it fail occasionally? Yeah. It's not perfect. I don't think Touch ID second generation on the iPhone 7 was perfect. But is it really good? Yeah. Is it better than Touch ID? I would say it definitely is. Over the next few months, you're going to see a lot of Android phones coming out with in-screen fingerprint sensors, and then you're going to see the iPhone with Face ID, and I think it's going to be a pretty fundamental divide. Android and iOS are already really different, but most Android phones you see this year are going to have a built-in fingerprint sensor in the screen, or at least a lot of them. All the Apple products and iPhones you see this year, they're going to have Face ID. Apple is working to build that into every product across the board, and I think it's a really good idea. It's up to you to decide whether you want to scan your face or scan your fingerprint. Scanning your fingerprint in the display looks like it's going to be really cool, but at the same time, there's so many use cases where you can't scan a fingerprint. When you have gloves on, if your hand is wet, if it's sweaty, sometimes it doesn't work. Usually your face is pretty intact, and you can just hold your phone up, look in it and you're in your phone. You swipe up to get started. Let's move on to cameras. They are incredible on the iPhone 10. Video, I would argue, is the best in any smartphone. The Google Pixel 2 objectively has a better camera than the iPhone 10. The iPhone 10 tends to make photos darker and really not bring out highlights, but make shadows and other parts of the frame darker, where the Google Pixel 2 gives you a very natural look. I'll put some pictures on screen right now so you can see. It depends what you like. If you like these darker photos like I do, then you're gonna absolutely love the iPhone 10's camera. If you want the best video in a smartphone, 4K 60 frames per second, that's something I also forgot to mention in my initial review. This is pretty much one of the only smartphones that can do 4K at 60 frames per second. Get the iPhone 10 if that's really important to you. If you want to shoot video on your smartphone, or at least a lot of video at higher frame rates, it looks incredible on the iPhone 10. You've got the wide-angle lens in addition to this lens that is more zoomed in, so you can use optical zoom on this phone to take higher resolution photos while standing in the same spot. Because before, on other iPhones without dual lenses, if you're zooming, you're just digitally zooming. You're blowing up the image. Two of these lenses, in addition to allowing you to stand in the same place and zoom and retain really high image quality, you can use portrait mode, which gives you that pretty good blur effect. It's kind of sketchy sometimes. It works really well in some situations, doesn't work well in other situations. Conversely, the front-facing portrait mode on the iPhone 10 is a disaster. Edges are sharp and jagged. Things are out of focus when they should be in focus, or blurry when they should be clear. It's bad. And it launched in beta. That's how Apple gets away with shipping a feature like this. Technically, it's not a finished feature just yet. Everyone is just testing portrait mode. But it works well in the back camera. I'll give it an 8 out of 10 for that. It usually does a good job. Sometimes things look off. But the front-facing camera, it's like a 2 or 3 out of 10. Sometimes you get a good shot, but usually just ends up looking really bad and really fake. I love the cameras on the iPhone 10. I think that the Google Pixel 2 objectively shoots better photos than the iPhone 10. I think it has a better portrait mode than the iPhone 10 with only one lens, which is incredible what Google's doing with software. But they're still really good. They're not bad by any means. They are a lot better than the iPhone 7, 6S, 6. If you're upgrading from one of those phones, you're going to be blown away by what this phone can do. And powering the camera and everything else on the iPhone 10 is the most incredible processor I've ever seen or used in a smartphone, and that's the A11 Bionic chip. I'm going to be honest, nothing comes close to the iPhone 10. The Google Pixel 2 doesn't come close. The Samsung Galaxy S8 is sort of like a meme at this point because it's so slow compared to this phone. No other iPhone comes close except the iPhone 8 or the iPhone 8 Plus because they have the same processor. Apple has done something miraculous, incredible with this processor, and I don't know what it is. There's no lag, there's no slowdowns, the phone does not freeze up or get glitchy. It just works, and it works really well, and I've never felt like I've needed more power. Sometimes I've been like, oh man, a faster processor could help with this. It's just good. The A11 Bionic chip is the fastest processor in a mobile phone, and it shows in everything you do on the iPhone 10. It's amazing. And on top of really good performance, this still has the best battery life that I've ever had on an iPhone. My iPhone 7 would die before the end of the day on a regular basis. My iPhone 8 would die every once in a while, but it was still really good. This has a 2,716 milliamp hour battery. I don't know why I memorized that, probably because it's really important to me that I have good battery life, but it's got this giant battery inside. It's got an L shape, and compared to other phones, 2,716 milliamp hours is not very big, but Apple's done something with the OLED display, with the A11 Bionic chip, with the physical battery and the juice inside of it to make this phone die very infrequently. I think I've only had to charge this before the end of the day one time over the course of 3 months, which is something that I would have only been dreaming about for the iPhone 7. I emphasized this in my initial iPhone 10 review. I want to emphasize it again now. If you want the best battery life in any iPhone, if that's something that is really important to you, buy the iPhone 10. I know it's expensive. I know it's a lot of money out of your pocket. But if you want the best battery life, there's no other iPhone to buy than the iPhone 10. I also want to touch on iOS 11 on the iPhone 10. You've heard me say it before. I'm going to say it again in the future. I think iOS 11 is the best version of iOS ever, and it runs incredibly well on the iPhone 10. I know a lot of you have had bad experiences, but on the iPhone 10, it's been a really good experience. On older devices, yes, iOS can get kind of sketchy. It doesn't work right. You get terrible battery life. You get battery throttling, which is going to be, you'll have the option to disable that in iOS 11.3. On the iPhone 10, the battery is new, the experience is new, the phone is new, and it feels like it was made to run on an iPhone 10 in the first place. Maybe that's the problem. Apple probably designed iOS 11 for the iPhone 10 rather than every other device out there, so it gets kind of bad on the iPhone 6 or 6S. But it's really good on the iPhone 10. I don't run into a lot of bugs or issues, and it feels great. I really like it. Before wrapping up this video, there's a couple of other things that I want to talk about that I just forgot to mention in my original iPhone 10 review. Number one, the speakers on the iPhone 10 are really good. There was a rumor during the summer that Apple was working to improve the stereo balance, and that happened. It sounds really good. It sounds much more balanced than on the iPhone 7 when I believe the stereo speakers were introduced, and it sounds really great. Watching videos, listening to music, there's no bass, it's not optimal, but if you only have your phone, I think that these are the best speakers on an iPhone to date. I also want to talk about how the phone has held up over the past 3 months because it's $1,000. I have not dropped it, luckily. I think it fell out of my pocket once or twice, but there was no serious like face down drop where it shattered, everything got messed up. The repair costs are pretty hefty from what I understand, but while the back and the screen don't really have that many scratches on it, I mean, I take good care of my phone in the first place. I wear a bumper case on it, but I've never had a screen protector or back protector. I don't see a lot of scratches when I look at it. There's a few micro abrasions. Where I do see a lot of scratches, or at least a lot more scratches, are on the stainless steel band around the iPhone 10. If you're farther away, you're not going to notice it, but if you definitely hold it closer to your face, you can see there will be a number of abrasions there, even if you're careful, just because that's the part of the phone that you're touching the most. It's the side. You'll have dirt or dust on your fingers or hands. When you put a case on it, there might be dirt or dust that gets stuck inside of that. It's probably going to scratch up the sides of the phone, which will decrease the resale value if you plan on selling your phone in the future. I just don't know if there's a way to get around that other than leaving the case on all the time and having one that's airtight to the point where like nothing can get underneath. And that's gonna wrap up my thoughts. So is the iPhone 10 still good 3 months later? Yes, this phone is incredible. Even though the overall hype for the phone has died down, it's been out for a while, people have gotten over it, I still really like it. I love using it every day. I love the gestures. The battery life is incredible. The cameras are incredible. The processor is the best on any phone in the market right now. Still 3 months later, it's impressive. It continues to blow me away, and I think that everything it does justifies its $1,000 price. The iPhone 10 is still absolutely good 3 months later, and I don't see myself switching phones anytime soon. So that's going to be all for this video. As always, I want to hear your thoughts down below. If you have an iPhone 10, tell me about your experience in the comments section. If you enjoyed watching this video, it does help me out if you take just 1 second to drop a like down below, and of course, hit subscribe for more videos like this in the future. You guys have been killing it lately. If you'd like to help support the channel, you can head over to iupdateos.com/merch, buy a t-shirt or hoodie. That'd be fantastic. For now, I've been Sam. I hope all of you are doing great, and I will talk to you in my next video.